Hello, my friends. Welcome to Get Ready with Me and Talk About Stuff. I am your host, Stephanie McCown, and today we are going to be talking about a topic that is a little less fun than what I originally had planned, but it is indeed more important. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Welcome to the show. I hope you enjoy it. I do want to say right up front, this is not a tutorial. So if you are looking for tutorials, there are literally thousands of them out there, but this is not one of them. This is just a show where I do my makeup and talk about whatever is on my mind. And the topic I have to talk about today is one that I discuss periodically throughout my different episodes of my show, but today we're really going to focus on it, and I'll tell you what that is in just a minute. But first, allow me to set the stage. So a few days ago, something came across my Facebook feed about an assignment some students in a local school had been given, and this assignment, and I believe it was high school students. Originally, I thought it was middle school, but apparently it's actually high school students. This assignment asked the students to consider white privilege and to consider what it is, how it impacts their day-to-day lives, how their lives might be different if they were, if they were a person of color. Not that they would be able to necessarily understand completely how it would be different, but at least see the ways that, being a white person would impact their day-to-day life because of various privileges they were given. I read the assignment and I thought it was a pretty good assignment. It's one that I would have been more than happy to have my son complete for himself. Let me just read to you a couple things from the assignment, and then I'm going to go into why this assignment was given and so forth. So they said, examples of white privilege. In order to understand white privilege in action, it is helpful to think of examples of how it can appear in day-to-day life. The following examples are drawn from the work of Peggy McIntosh. Let's say you're going shopping. Imagine that you, if you're white, are going shopping and looking in the cosmetics section for a brand of foundation that matches your skin tone. Are you fearful that your shade doesn't exist? Most likely not. This is white privilege. What if you're looking for a pair of shoes or lingerie and you find an item in the color nude? Are you forced to wonder why a brand's version of nude doesn't apply to you? Probably not. How about if you walk into a store? Do you assume that employees might be looking at you because they think you're going to steal something? Because you can't afford it? Again, probably not. These kinds of worries don't exist when you have been afforded white privilege. Hairstyles. If you're white, take a moment to imagine that you're going for a job interview, and it is specifically stated that certain hairstyles are unacceptable in the workplace, such as braids or dreadlocks, styles that are traditionally worn by Black people. Does the mention of this restriction on hairstyles make you feel like you're being discriminated against because of your race? If not, that is an example of white privilege. And it goes on to discuss things in the media. It discusses just everyday stuff that, as white people, we don't really have to think about. And it makes a point in here to discuss that this is not intended to shame white people. Nobody is asking for white people to apologize for being white. Nobody is saying that white people never struggle because they're white. Or not because they're white, but they never, nobody's saying white people never struggle for anything. Nobody is saying white people don't have to work hard for what they get. What they are saying, what it boils down to, essentially, is white privilege means your skin color didn't make a difficult job even more difficult. Whatever you struggled to get in your life, you didn't have to struggle even more because of your skin color. That is what white privilege, in its essence, boils down to. When I read the assignment, I thought, this is great. This is going to spark so many fantastic conversations. That was not the response that many in the community had. So the whole reason why this was on Facebook at all is because parents were angry and they wanted They wanted the community to know what the school is teaching our kids, and felt that their children were being told that because they are white, they are racist, which was not the case at all, and could have easily been cleared up with your children with a honest and meaningful conversation about white privilege. Some of the responses. Now, the original poster had said that there's a school board meeting coming up and invited parents to show up. Okay. One person says, school board meeting? This is warfare against us, and you milquetoast morons talk about school board meetings? You're as big a part of the problem as the leftist whack jobs that are hell-bent on destroying our race, our nation, and our God. And then somebody took the time to tell me, Stephanie, we don't have racism up here. We don't have the diversity to have this issue, nor telling kids they are racist for being born white is in any way appropriate. Again, nobody said being born white was a problem. Another person said, total BS. I hope the school board meeting is packed with pissed off parents. I have talked to my kids and gave them permission to walk out of class and call me if anyone tries to teach this crap. And that went on and on and on, and as far as I know is still going on, for hundreds and hundreds of comments from local parents. And then the local news station ran a story about it, and there were more comments there from people who were just so angry at the fact that their child, their precious little snowflake, might have to learn that their experience as a white person in this world is not the only experience that's out there, that other people might experience the world differently. So as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, what the hell? And at first it was, when the comments first started coming in, I was like, are you kidding me? People are that angry about this? But then as it kept going and going and going, it really was jarring to see so much hate concentrated into one place. And it really showed me a few things. Number one, it showed me that there are a lot of people, not just here, because these were comments that were coming from all over the country. A lot of them were from here, but there are also people who don't live here who were commenting. There are a lot of people who will rally together and fight very hard to protect what they consider the respectability of their racist ideas. It isn't that they're saying they're not racist. Some of them did, but that was quickly disproven by what followed. A lot of them were not saying they weren't racist. What they were angry about, from the reading I had of the comments, and just, these weren't just a few comments. There were probably, all told, on all the posts I looked at, probably around 3,000 comments about this one assignment given at a small school in northern Michigan. What I gathered is the white people who were commenting and who were so angry weren't necessarily denying the fact that these things are racist. It really struck me that what they were angry about, when you really get down to it, is their racism has been afforded a measure of respectability over the last, since the founding of this country. And the very notion that anyone would say, your racism is not worthy of respect, there's nothing respectable about being a racist, bothered them. They could not sit with that discomfort long enough to actually read the assignment, because it was very evident that most of the people commenting had not bothered to read any portion of the assignment. They just read white privilege in the big bold letters at the top of the page, and that was it. That just set them off. And they rallied hard to fight for what they believed was a cause. And I'm being very generous with that term. It's not a cause. The irony here is this assignment was given to the students as a follow-up after, I don't know if they read or watched, or maybe both, A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. Now, I don't know if you've seen this movie or read the play, but the movie or play was written, she wrote the play in the 1950s, and then I believe it was in the early 1960s it was made into a movie. This is about a black family living in segregated Chicago. And again, we've discussed in previous videos that, you know, Illinois was a free state, but had a whole lot of problems with racism. So here we are talking about a family who is a couple generations removed from their, you know, they had enslaved ancestors, and they're trying to make a living, you know, build a life for themselves in very segregated Chicago. They come into some money, and it really explores the first of all, somebody had to die for them to get that money. It was insurance money. And it really explores the ideas of white privilege. It explores the notion of segregation. It explores, you know, the life people have to settle for when certain opportunities are denied to them because of the color of their skin. So all of the topics that were discussed in the follow-up assignment were perfectly relevant. People were trying to say, well, that's inappropriate, you shouldn't be discussing that, etc., etc. Well, first of all, yes, we should be discussing it because these are realities that people live every single day. And secondly, it kind of amused me, really, that these parents were so angry about this written assignment. It's like, did you not know that they were reading A Raisin in the Sun? Did you not bother to read it, or at least watch the movie, or even look at Cliff Notes or something? And that cracked me up, because it's like these parents are so concerned about their children, but they've already been exploring these topics. I mean, that's what the play is about, you know? And so these parents are acting like, you know, they have to protect their precious children, and, you know, can't be making them feel bad for being white, and blah, 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 and this assignment is terrible. But they were completely oblivious to the subjects being explored in the play. So it's like, you know, again, it's just manufactured outrage because they were triggered by the term white privilege. Another thing I noticed as this whole thing just blew up is there's no cohesion among white people. You know, we don't have the sense of community and family that the cultures that these people are wanting to criticize or dismiss or minimize seem to share. And I was thinking about this. I'm like, why is that? You know, we don't have a sense of sisterhood among white women. We don't have a sense of family among all white people. You know, other, like the black community, for example, is very adept at building cohesion, building a sense of family with other black people. Now, of course, that's not true. You know, that doesn't mean that across the board they're all really great friends and consider each other family. You know, as with any group, there are a variety of ideas in the black community, a variety of perceptions of, you know, what's right, what's wrong, how to move forward, etc., and so forth. But more often than not, there is a sense of community and family there that just simply doesn't exist among white people. And I've thought about this. I'm like, why is that? And it's because, in my opinion, I'm not an expert, but from what I've observed and what I've read and so forth, there's never been a time when white people have had to come together to survive. There's never been a time when we have had to form a united front just to be able to live. Now, you could say that the white nationalists are now forming a united front, but they don't have to do that to survive. They would be just fine without it. This is all just looking for something to be angry about, looking for reasons to say that they're oppressed. Everybody wants so desperately to be oppressed, but that's not the same as the sense of community that exists among a lot of people of color. Again, people of color, no matter which community they're from, they're not monolithic. Everyone has their own idea of what it means to be a family and so forth. But my point is, among white people, we don't have that cohesion. So where I'm going with that is, you can't go in and say, it's important for us to understand our privilege, because when we can understand this perspective and how our privilege impacts not only our lives, but also the lives of people of color, we're all going to do better. We're going to do better as white people. People of color are going to do better. It will be better for all of us if we took the time to understand this. Because we don't have that sense of community, there is no way you can appeal to that in people. Because, frankly, white people have always seen other white people as competition in many ways, competing for stolen land, competing for enslaved laborers, competing for resources. It's always been about competing to get ahead, not coming together to survive, competing to get ahead. And I think that creates a very different dynamic when you are trying to understand community and trying to understand social responsibility. I think that is one reason why it is so offensive to a lot of white people to think that they have a responsibility to other people in the world for anything, be it taking ownership of implicit bias, taking ownership of racist ideas, be it taking some responsibility for the environment because it affects all of us. I mean, it is profoundly offensive to some people to consider that, you have to think about more than just yourself. And I see that this is very common among white people. Certainly not exclusive to white people, not at all. But we're living in a country that is majority white. So if there is a problem, guess what? We helped create it. We probably were the primary reason it exists. And I think that this is an issue. This issue really comes up loud and clear when people are trying to appeal to the sense of greater good. And white people are just like, nah, I'm good, thanks. So I don't know how to address that. I don't know if there is a way to address that. I think that culturally, white people have just decided that what's good for them needs to be good for everybody. Or I should say what's good for us. I can't separate myself from it just because I don't share the same ideologies. I mean, I am white. So if collectively white people have decided what's good for me needs to be good for you because I don't intend to change anything, that really speaks to the idea that we have no sense of cohesion with each other, and certainly not with people who don't look like us. Moving on. As I was reading these comments and trying to process what I was seeing, it was jarring. It was very disheartening to see so many people come out swinging over something that is an established fact. It's not something being said to criticize. It's not something being said to place blame. It's something that is just a matter of fact of living in a country that was built on the subjugation of non-white people. And we have to be honest about that. The systems that we have in place are built to favor white people, and that is by design, and it has been that way since the beginning. So when the subject of white privilege comes up and a bunch of white people get offended by it, I'm puzzled by that. I'm puzzled by the notion they have, some of my fellow white people have, that this is just simply not true. That, we in this country, we treat everyone equally. Everyone's the same here. We don't see color. But literally in our founding documents, we absolutely, from the beginning, have seen color. And it's in America's DNA. This is how we built a country. People were subjugated because of the color of their skin. People were enslaved. Their land was stolen. They were treated as experiments. Some were put into extraordinarily dangerous situations that the powers that be felt white people were too valuable to be subjected to. So they found people of color to do it. This country sees color, and it doesn't, not in the good way. I think we should see color, but I think we should see color in the sense that we honor the cultural differences between each other, and we learn from each other, because to me, not seeing color is dismissive. But the toxic flip side of that is, some people see color, and they see color as a means to divide who is worthy and who is not. And that is the wrong way to see color. And that is the way this country has done it since the very beginning. And it is disingenuous and, quite frankly, ignorant to say otherwise. People who say things to me about, many people in these comments that I read said this country has never, how do they phrase it? Some people would say things like, in this country we don't see color, or in this country, and this is not who we are. We are so divided by race when these questions come up, and this is not who we are. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is exactly who we are. And until we come to grips with that, until we can be honest and real about the history of this country and how we got where we are, going forward is going to be really difficult. Going forward in any way that's positive is going to be really difficult, because if you're willing to embrace a disingenuous narrative just because that's the one you prefer, don't tell me you're not racist. Don't tell me that you treat everyone equally, because when you choose to do that, you're silencing the voices of millions of people of color who over the years, for centuries now, have been saying, yeah, this country is hella racist. Let me tell you about my lived experiences with the racism that this country is apparently so proud of. When you say that those things are not an issue, you're calling every person of color who has shared their lived experiences with racism a liar, and you are saying that your white perspective supersedes everything else and is more important than the voices that have been rising up since the beginning, saying, I am being treated unjustly and unfairly, and it may cost me my life because of the color of my skin. A couple days ago was the 30-year anniversary of the Rodney King beating. And the inescapable truth is that the issues that we were struggling with in this country 30 years ago, 60 years ago, 100 years ago, a lot of them are still here. We are still grappling with many of the same questions. When I watch or listen to some of the speeches from, the civil rights era, I think, man, so much has not changed. So much has not changed. It's easy to pat ourselves on the back and say we've come so far because, it's illegal now to segregate housing and schooling and so forth. Even though, if we're being honest, we know people find ways around that. You know, we like to think we've come so far because it's no longer acceptable to use the N-word. Well, guess what? There is at least one elected official in northern Michigan who, within the last year, was caught on tape using the N-word and refused to apologize for it, refused to back down. Even when it cost him his position, he refused to acknowledge that he was wrong. So don't think that we've made some great progress just because there are some things that are no longer polite to say in public. And that's the thing. A lot of what we see, a lot of the driving force behind racism and the continuing strength of white supremacy in this country is because white people haven't necessarily become less racist. They've just learned how to do it in a polite way. And other white people who disagree with them are too polite and are allowing them space to express these opinions without any pushback, because we don't want to make waves. We don't want to be rude. We don't want to do this. You don't want to disrupt a family dinner. And so the politeness, the politeness of allowing these people to speak unchecked and allowing it to still maintain a level of respectability as long as they only say racist things behind closed doors. Can't say that out in public. But, you know, if nobody hears you, it's fine. That is as much responsible for the continuing reign of white supremacy as so many other things. Racism does not have to be outright violent or glaringly grotesque to be racism. There are microaggressions. There are things people say without even thinking about it that are just as racist as going out in public and dropping the N-word at the next black person you see. It doesn't become any less racist just because it's happening behind closed doors. In fact, I will even go so far as to say, I almost prefer when people don't do these things behind closed doors, because I want to know who I'm dealing with. And I think that's what was so jarring about reading these comments on these posts about the school assignment was, you know, in northern Michigan, we are a tourist region. We depend heavily on tourist dollars to help us make a living up here. You know, if it weren't for tourism, a lot of people who are here would not be able to be here. It would be too expensive to live here. So northern Michigan knows how to be very polite, knows how to put on the facade that needs to be maintained so that people will still want to come here. Now, the interesting thing is, throughout the pandemic, that facade cracked severely. We had the county official using the N-word. We had another county official bring out a gun in the middle of a Zoom meeting. There have been other incidents that I can't think of right off the top of my head, but more and more it's becoming apparent that northern Michigan is blatantly and deeply racist. And the shocking thing is there are still so many people who live up here who will say, northern Michigan's not racist. We accept everyone here. And again, if that is you, if you're saying that, you are calling the people of color who have shared the experiences they've had up here that are decidedly racist, you're calling them liars. And I would like you to consider the racism just in that. The racism in saying, well, your experience as you're describing it isn't what actually happened. That right there is an example of the white supremacy, the white supremacist ideas that you hold that you don't even realize you have until something like that comes out of your mouth. If you're willing to tell a person of color that your understanding of their experience is more valid than what they are telling you, you are saying, I am superior to you, therefore how I perceive this matters more than what you say. And I saw that over and over and over again in these comments about the school assignment. You know, it was really It was heartbreaking to see the things people were saying. It was infuriating to see the things people were saying. I know so many people of color in this area who already didn't feel safe necessarily. But I can't even imagine how that must have felt to read those comments and know that these are people you share this region with. These are people in your community who are saying these things and who think it's perfectly fine to say these things, and that if you have a problem with them saying that, well, then you're the racist, not them. You're the one who is causing a problem by putting a spotlight on these things, not them for these things even happening in the first place. That argument was made over and over again. Well, you're the racist. The teacher who assigned this, they're the racist. And this is a very old trick. It is nothing new under the sun. People are not as clever as they think they are. And the idea that pointing out racist ideologies and the presence that they have in, school curriculums and so forth, the idea that that is the racism, that is the racist thing, not the fact that these things exist in the first place. It's just a way to distract from a very uncomfortable conversation. And I really think that is why people do these things. I don't think anybody, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure there are some people who are unaware that they have racist ideas. I honestly believe, though, after reading those thousands of comments, and I read almost all of them, just like with my jaw dropped open, or alternatively, my jaw clenched and my fists clenched, like, what are you thinking? So I'm reading all of this and I'm thinking, these people know they are racists. They know this. What they want is to be made comfortable in their racism. And when someone makes them uncomfortable with it, when somebody says, you know what, your racism does not deserve the veneer of respectability it has been given for the last several hundred years. When somebody has the courage to say that, that is when people come out with, well, then you're the racist, aren't you? If you're saying that because I'm white, I have privilege, doesn't that make you a racist? There is a difference between having a racist idea and simply stating a fact. And white privilege is a fact. For example, in my own life, I have a son who never met his father. I left when I was 7 weeks pregnant. It was an abusive marriage. I got the heck out of there. I left, never went back. He never met his father. His father passed away in 2012. Over the years, I have received at various times government assistance. I am not able to work. Long story there. So I collect disability. Now, certainly I have been shamed at one point or another for collecting disability, but that's okay because you don't know my medical history, so I'm really not too concerned about what you think. But here's the thing. At no point was it counted against me that my son never met his father. At no point did anybody say that because I had a child and I chose to leave, that I was using my child just to collect welfare benefits. It was never seen as an indictment against my entire race that I had a child, that I chose to be a single parent. And I chose that knowing I was going to need help. It was never considered. Nobody ever said that to me. What people were saying to me was, I'm glad you got away. I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad that neither of you are being abused, and so on and so forth. However, I know of several women of color who are single parents for a variety of reasons, and the things said about them are very different from what I've experienced. And we can see that in the media. I mean, just the idea that, You know, people have this notion that most of the welfare recipients are people of color, when in fact that it's not. It's mostly white people. Or that women of color have all these babies by all these different fathers to collect welfare benefits, when that's not true either. You know, these are very racist tropes that thrive, but I've never been subjected to them, not once. And that is just one example of a privilege I've enjoyed. I have never worried that when I share my story, somebody is going to judge me for choosing to be a single parent. I'm sure some people do, but it's never been verbalized to me. It's never been said to me outright. And that is not something that, you know, women of color who are single parents for whatever reason, that is not something that they have been able to experience. You know, there's a lot of judgment. There are a lot of assumptions that are made. You know, it is a very different experience for women of color who are single parents. And it just speaks to the different standards that we have for white women and women of color. You know, I know a lot of white women who have babies with several different fathers, and, you know, they might be called names, but it's not, again, it's not considered an indictment against their entire race. It's like, she's a mess, you know, whether you agree with that or not. I'm just saying, you know, this is the perception. She's a mess. She made bad choices. She messed up her life by inviting all these men in, whatever. It's not seen as something that is applied to her entire race, but that is not true when the person who's doing that is a person of color. All right. I'm going to finish this up. Mostly I am going to leave because I don't really know exactly what I'm doing. I'm just playing around with colors, and I'm kind of run into a dead end for a second. So I'm going to go finish this up and be back with a few final thoughts. Please hang on. I'll be right back. All right, I am back. With some earrings today. I don't normally do that, but you know, I've got these holes in my ears, so I figured why not. So as I was saying, the conversations surrounding white privilege and dismantling white supremacy are uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean that they are conversations we shouldn't have. And I would also challenge you, white person listening, especially if you're someone who is disinclined to have these conversations, ask yourself why that is. One thing I've noticed is it doesn't seem to matter who the messenger is. People who are committed to finding justifications for their racist ideas and racist behavior are going to do so regardless of who is challenging them. It doesn't matter if the challenge is coming from a person of color who is sharing their experiences and saying, you know, we have a problem. What I see white people doing, at least the ones who really want somebody to say, hey, it's okay to be racist, is they say, well, people of color are just looking for someone to blame for their problems, so they choose white people. And then if it's a white person saying, hey, white people, you know, we need to do better, we need to stop being garbage and stop being so damn racist, then what is said is, well, you're white, so you have no standing on this. You can't be calling out white people when you are yourself white. So it doesn't matter who the message comes from. People who want to find justifications for their racism are going to find it. A lot of the people who complained about the violence they said was happening last year at the Black Lives Matter protests, by the way, 93% of those protests were peaceful. And a lot of the violence didn't happen until the police showed up with tear gas and so forth. Anyway, they were complaining last year about violence at the protests. Prior to that, they were complaining about Colin Kaepernick and others peacefully taking a knee during the national anthem. So it doesn't even matter the form of protest. People who want to find justification for their racist ideas are going to do it. And I think we're at a point where people need to be honest about that. They need to stop saying, I don't like the way you're presenting the problem. I don't like the words you're using. I don't like the words white privilege because I've had to work hard for everything I've got and I've struggled too. It is all, quite frankly, bullshit. It is all just an excuse to hang on to racist ideas and to not be held accountable and to look for ways to shift the blame off of yourself or myself, ourselves, whatever, so we don't have to wrestle with these very uncomfortable things. I mean, it's not comfortable to be told that you live in a racist culture and you benefit from that racism. And by refusing to evaluate your own biases, you are participating in that. You are part of the problem. That's uncomfortable. It's not meant to be comfortable. If it was a comfortable conversation, we could have had a long time ago and these issues would have been resolved. That's not happened. I would also challenge you to ask yourself if confronting white privilege and confronting white supremacy is a threat to your culture. What does that say about your culture? What does it say when the challenge to evaluate your own participation in racist ideologies, your own perpetuation of white supremacy, feels like a threat to you as a person, feels like it's challenging your core beliefs? What does that say about you and the beliefs that you hold? Because if you're feeling threatened by the idea of giving that up, you need to seriously consider that you are far more racist than you want to believe. And I don't say these things to place blame, because I've had to wrestle with that within myself. You know, I'm white. I grew up in the United States. I grew up hearing a very whitewashed version of history. I grew up hearing all kinds of racist things said just off the cuff because people say and do racist things without even thinking about it. And I had to evaluate my own biases. And I am by no means perfect in how I do this. Not by any stretch. I make mistakes all the time. The thing is, are you willing and am I willing to learn and do better? Or are you going to make the choice to get so entrenched in your idea of your right to be racist, basically, that you are incapable of learning and you are incapable of evolving and becoming a better person who is going to create a more equitable society for everyone? That's the question we're left with. So how do we go forward? I have to be honest with you. After I read all of those comments and I saw the reality of what we were facing, you know, people had so much hope, I think, last summer when there were so many protests happening and people were calling for change. I think there was a measure of hope there that maybe hadn't been felt in a while. And people who've been down this road before were warning those of us who were feeling perhaps more hopeful than warranted, you know, don't invest too heavily in what's happening right now as far as it being an indication of lasting change, because it usually doesn't last. When it comes down to applying it to your day-to-day life and accepting your role in white supremacy, a lot of people are not going to want to do that, and they're going to revert back to their racist ideas. I heard that warning said in so many words a lot. And I thought, well, I hope that's not true. You know, I have some hope. And then I read those comments and whatever hope I had seemed to just dry right up. It just was like, it just evaporated. So how do we go forward? I think the only way forward is through. I think white people who are trying to do better and who sincerely want a more equitable society for everyone need to continue speaking up, even if it means we're called names, even if it means we disrupt family dinners, even if it means, people go out of their way to try to sabotage our efforts at, say, in my case, selling books or whatever. I'm well aware that when I speak up about these things, there are some people who are going to take that as an opportunity to trash my books or trash my YouTube channel or just trash me in general, and there will be consequences. I think we have to be willing to live with those consequences. I think we also need to stop being so polite. We need to stop being so polite to the people in our families or in our neighborhoods, in our communities, who spout off racist things and expect people to just allow them to do it because they don't want to rock the boat. The politeness of white supremacy it's an element that isn't discussed, as far as I can see, very much, but it is a problem. The politeness in allowing people to express these opinions in the name of diversity and in the name of freedom of speech or whatever is part of the reason we are where we are. Why is progress so slow in these areas? Number one, because we have a lot of people who don't want to listen, no matter who the messenger is or how the message is conveyed. And secondly, if we're honest, it's because a lot of us are just too damn polite to say to people, your opinions are garbage. Not every opinion deserves a platform, and nobody has to tolerate your racist ideas. There is nothing respectable about them, and in respectable company, you're not going to be allowed to spout those things without some pushback, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it ruins a family dinner. Ruin family dinners in the name of dismantling white supremacy. And if any of what I've said today, and I will admit I have not said everything perfectly, because I stumble over my words constantly, no matter what I'm talking about. But if any of it offends you, and you're thinking, well, she's the racist, I'm going to ask you to challenge yourself to ask why these conversations make you so uncomfortable. Why is the default argument against bringing awareness to these things to simply call the person who's saying them a racist? I'm not saying all white people are terrible people. I'm not saying you should be ashamed to be white. I'm not saying you need to apologize for being white. I'm saying we need to acknowledge that as white people, we have a lot of advantages simply because we're white, and that this is the way the system was built, and it is not equitable for everyone who calls America home. This is not a country that is free for every person. It is not a country that has equal opportunities for everyone. And no matter how much you've struggled as a white person, your struggle was not made more difficult simply because of the color of your skin. And that is the point. So that's my challenge to you today. Knock off the bullshit. Get really honest. If the reason the conversations offend you is because you are racist and you want to be racist, just say that. Just say it. Because you're not really fooling anyone. And if you're a local parent who's watching this and you were one of the people who commented on that Facebook post who were angry about the assignment, you need to really ask yourself why. And one of the arguments is, well, these things need to be talked about at home. If you were talking with your kids about this stuff at home, you wouldn't be so bothered about it being discussed in school as well, because you would be open to hearing different perspectives. You would be open to allowing your child to see things through other people's eyes. So you're not talking about it at home. Don't even try to pull that. You're not talking about it. You're just mad that other people want to. And I also want you to consider the tremendous privilege of just being able to learn about this and talk about this, instead of having to live these experiences every single day of your life, no matter what you do or where you go. That's all I've got for you today. I hope this gives you a lot to think about. I hope it made you uncomfortable. These conversations are not intended to be comfortable. Have a great rest of your day. Love to hear your thoughts. Please be respectful. And I will talk with you again really soon. Also, I've left some resources in the description box if you'd like to read more about the assignment itself and also more about what white privilege is. And if you choose to comment, please just keep it respectful. That's all I'm asking of you. I'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.